At 0900 on September 27, 1942, Lieutenant Colonel William Whaling stood at the edge of Henderson Field on Guadalcanal and watched 4 Marines carry a stretcher toward the aid station. He was 22 years old, on his 3rd patrol that week, and had been killed before his comrades found the Japanese position. 3 more stretchers followed. That morning, a 7-man patrol had been swallowed by the jungle. Only 4 returned. The Japanese seemed to own the undergrowth. 2 months into the campaign, Marine patrols were walking into ambushes they couldn't even see coming. 17 patrols had been wiped out in 3 weeks. The enemy moved through dense foliage like ghosts. Marines trained to fight in the open could not spot a soldier 10 feet away. Sharpshooters picked off officers, and hidden machine gun nests waited until whole squads walked past before opening fire from behind. Whaling recognized the pattern. At that rate, the division would be bled dry. Standard infantry tactics simply didn't work in that terrain. The Marines needed a new approach, something the Japanese wouldn't expect. 2 days earlier, Whaling had been removed from his post as executive officer of the 5th Marine Regiment, not for failure in combat, but over personality clashes with his commanding officer. Most officers in his position would have been shipped home, but Colonel Gerald Thomas, the division's chief of staff, knew Whaling's reputation. A World War I veteran, a Silver Star recipient at San Miguel, an expert marksman who'd competed in the 1924 Olympics, and above all, a master of fieldcraft. Thomas kept him on Guadalcanal and told him to solve the jungle problem. Whaling spent 3 days watching patrols depart and counting how many returned. The arithmetic was brutal. If things continued, the division would run out of infantrymen long before the Japanese ran out of jungle. What he needed were men who could hunt the hunters, men who understood stalking, could read terrain and move silently, and could kill without being seen. On September 29th, Whaling entered General Alexander Vandegrift's command tent with a plan: organize a scout sniper unit. He proposed 100 volunteers, hand-picked from Marines with hunting backgrounds, outdoorsmen and expert marksmen, then train them in reconnaissance and ambush tactics. These small teams would move into the jungle to gather intelligence and eliminate Japanese positions before conventional patrols advanced. Vandegrift approved at once. He admired the idea of small, mobile units operating independently behind enemy lines, a concept he'd read about in accounts of Lieutenant Colonel Robert Rogers' Rangers during the French and Indian War, and it fit Guadalcanal's desperate needs. Whaling had 1 week to recruit and begin training. That night he read service records looking for specific markers: expert rifle qualifications, rural upbringings, hunting experience, and disciplinary notes that showed independence rather than cowardice. Men who questioned orders but always finished the mission. By October 1st, he'd identified 43 candidates and summoned them for a 0600 briefing on October 2nd. He told them the assignment was voluntary and warned them that reconnaissance work carried casualty rates north of 50%. He explained they would operate in 2- or 3-man teams, sometimes for days behind enemy lines, with no guaranteed backup or extraction if things went wrong. 41 volunteered on the spot. 2 walked away. Most of the volunteers were barely 20, and many had been in combat less than 2 months, but they had something regular infantry lacked. They wanted to hunt. Whaling was about to turn them into the most feared unit the Japanese faced in the Pacific, and his training would become a blueprint later referenced by other Marine units, one of whom would add a shocking recruitment requirement that spawned an 80-year legend. Training began on October 3rd. There were no manuals for what he planned. The Marine Corps had dissolved its scout sniper program after World War I. Everything Whaling taught came from hard-won experience. 24 years in the Corps, jungle patrols in Nicaragua, and battlefields in Europe taught him that invisible soldiers survive longer than merely brave ones. The first lesson he enforced was silence. He marched his volunteers into jungle west of Henderson Field and ordered them to walk 100 yards without making a sound. Every man failed at first, Gear rattled, boots cracked branches, canteens clinked against rifles. The jungle amplified the smallest noise. He made them try again, stripping away anything that made a sound, taping down metal parts, wrapping cloth around canteen hooks, swapping out standard boots for softer-soled footwear. After 3 days, half the men could move through dense vegetation without alerting positions 200 yards away. Next came marksmanship. Most Marines could hit targets at 300 yards on a range, but outdoor combat brought wind, rain, and targets that shot back. Whaling taught them to judge distance by terrain features, estimate wind by watching foliage, and factor in humidity's effect on a bullet's trajectory. He forced them to fire from awkward positions, uphill, downhill, prone in mud, crouched behind scant cover, until by October 10th his best shooters could kill at 400 yards using iron sights. The hardest part was teaching a new mindset. Regular Marine infantry operated in squads of dozens under clear chains of command, where initiative was limited. Whaling needed the opposite, 2- and 3-man teams acting independently for days, making tactical decisions without waiting for orders. He trained them in map reading and terrain analysis, how to pick ambush sites, how to sketch enemy fortifications, and how to estimate enemy strength by observing campfire smoke and foot traffic.
On October 13, Walling received orders from General Van de Grift. The division was preparing an offensive across the Montanikau River, and Japanese forces were dug in on the far bank, with machine gun nests covering every approach and artillery positions hidden in the jungle canopy. Regular patrols had been cut down trying to find those emplacements, so Van de Grift wanted Walling's partly trained unit to locate enemy positions before the main assault began. Walling selected 8 men, split them into 4 2-man teams, assigned each a sector to reconnoiter, and instructed them to avoid contact whenever possible, to gather detailed intelligence, and to return with one stark warning: if they were pinned, there would be no rescue. The division could not afford to lose men searching for lost scouts. The first team slipped out at 0400 on October 14. 2 of the men were Montanans raised hunting elk in mountain forests, and after 3 hours moving west along the Montanikau River, they discovered a Japanese artillery position at 0715. The emplacement held 4 Type 92 howitzers hidden beneath camouflage nets and roughly 60 soldiers. The scouts sketched the layout, counted ammunition crates, and were back by noon. The second team found a machine gun nest overlooking a river crossing, and the third mapped patrol routes. The fourth team ran into trouble while charting a trail network. A Japanese patrol of 5 men appeared 50 yards away. The 2 Marines froze and waited for them to pass, but one Japanese soldier scanned the vegetation, spotted the hiding place, raised his rifle, and the nearest Marine fired first. The Japanese soldier dropped, his 4 comrades scattered and began shouting. Within half a minute, whistle signals rippled through the jungle and enemy troops converged. The 2 Marines bolted east toward friendly lines with Japanese soldiers in pursuit. A 40-minute chase ended when they reached Marine positions with 11 enemy troops 200 yards behind. Despite the danger, they returned with critical information. Walling now had precise maps of Japanese positions along a 2-mile front, intelligence that conventional patrols hadn't been able to collect in 2 months and that had cost dozens of Marines' lives. On October 15, General Van de Grift reviewed the maps and immediately revised his plan. Rather than a frontal assault, he would use the scout teams to direct flanking maneuvers around the Japanese strongpoints. Walling's unit had proven the concept, and Van de Grift asked him to expand, find 60 more volunteers, form a full company, and prepare for the largest Marine offensive of the Guadalcanal campaign. The battle for the Montanikau was coming, and Walling's scout snipers would spearhead the deadliest jungle fighting the Pacific had seen. The Montanikau offensive began at 0600 on October 6, 1942. Walling's scouts moved out 30 minutes ahead of the main assault with a simple, brutal mission: infiltrate Japanese lines, locate command posts and artillery, eliminate officers and radio operators, and sow chaos before the infantry crossed the river. Walling combined his scouts with the 3rd Battalion, 2nd Marines into a composite battalion. Everyone called it the Walling Group. They crossed the Matanikau 3 miles upstream of the enemy positions and pushed through jungles so thick visibility sank to 20 feet. No trails, no maps, only compass bearings and hard-earned instinct. By 0800, they were 2 miles behind Japanese lines, undetected. At 0920, a scout team spotted a Japanese command tent with radio gear, 6 officers poring over maps, and 15 soldiers on guard. The scouts waited for officers to assemble and then opened fire from 200 yards, killing 4 officers in the first volley. The remaining soldiers fled into the jungle and never identified who shot them. 30 minutes later, another team took out a forward observer, calling artillery strikes with a single 300-yard shot, and the bombardments halted. Marine infantry advanced 600 yards before Japanese gunners realized their spotter was dead. By noon, the Walling Group had encircled positions west of the Matanikau. While regular Marine battalions attacked from the east, the scouts severed retreat routes. Japanese units found themselves trapped with no reinforcements and nowhere to go. The fighting over the next 4 days, October 6th through the 9th, cost approximately 750 Japanese soldiers their lives and effectively destroyed the 4th Infantry Regiment as an organized combat force. Marine casualties were lighter than in previous offensives, 43 killed and 112 wounded. Vandegrift credited the scout sniper teams with fundamentally changing the tactical landscape. Small teams gathering intelligence, neutralizing key targets, and disrupting enemy command and control had achieved what conventional attacks could not. The Japanese had expected conventional attacks, not infiltration and ambush. Walling's methods worked, but they exacted a price. On October 8th, Walling was wounded by mortar shrapnel and sent to a field hospital. Infection set in, and by October 15, fever forced him to evacuate to a hospital ship. He spent 4 months recuperating and missed the remainder of the Guadalcanal campaign, but his program endured. The 1st Marine Division formalized scout sniper platoons in each infantry regiment, established a reconnaissance section in headquarters company, and standardized training. Selection criteria were codified. Everything Walling had improvised that September became official Marine doctrine by December. In February 1944, the division awarded him the Legion of Merit, citing his organization and supervision of scout sniper detachments and his instruction in scouting, stalking, and ambush tactics. Walling never returned to Guadalcanal. He later commanded the 1st Marine Regiment in Australia, led them at Cape Gloucester, and ultimately took the 29th Marines into Okinawa, earning the Navy Cross. He retired as a Major General in 1954. His real legacy, however, was not the medals, but a new way of fighting, a template for Marines to operate where conventional infantry could not. 2 years after Walling created his program, another Marine officer read his after-action reports, studied the training methods, and decided to take the idea further, to build a more aggressive elite platoon that would adopt one controversial twist. This officer wanted not merely disciplined Marines, but fighters and troublemakers, men who had won brawls and ended up in the brig. On January 15, 1944, at 0700, 1st Lieutenant Frank Tachovsky walked through the brig at Marine Corps Base Camp Tarawa in Hawaii. He was 29 years old, a combat veteran of Guadalcanal and Tarawa, and he was hunting for the fleet's worst Marines. Inside the cells, he found 18 men locked up for fighting, assault, insubordination, and property destruction, offenses that often led to dishonorable discharge. Tachovsky wasn't there to punish them, he was there to recruit. 3 months earlier, Colonel James Risley had given Tachovsky an unusual order: form an elite scout sniper platoon for the 6th Marine Regiment.
Modeled after British commandos, Tachovsky's plan was simple. Train 40 men in long-range reconnaissance and killing, but don't pull them from regular infantry. Risley wanted something different, not obedient riflemen, but Marines who couldn't be controlled by standard rules, men who thought for themselves and could survive behind enemy lines where handbook tactics got you killed. Tachovsky understood the order. He had read William Walling's after-action reports from Guadalcanal and studied how small scout teams had disrupted Japanese operations. But where Walling had recruited hunters and outdoorsmen, disciplined men with fieldcraft, Tachovsky wanted the opposite: fighters. His selection rule was blunt: find Marines who won fights and ended up in the brig. Ignore the weak who limped to sickbay. He told skeptical officers that when two Marines fought, the loser went to the infirmary while the winner went to the brig, and the winner had proven he could handle himself and wouldn't fold when things turned violent. The brig commander thought Tachovsky mad, calling the candidates troublemakers and the worst disciplinary cases in the division. Tachovsky insisted that was exactly the point. Over 3 weeks, he screened 47 Marines with records for fighting, assaults, insubordination, and property damage, men who often faced dishonorable discharges. He grilled them about why they fought, what they'd done before enlisting, and whether they could kill silently with a knife. 23 volunteered. Another 17 came from regular infantry ranks, experienced Marines with expert marksman ratings who'd proven themselves at Tarawa. By February 1st, Tachovsky had his 40, the Scout Sniper Platoon of the 6th Marine Regiment. Their nickname, the 40 Thieves, came later, after they began pilfering anything not bolted down on the big island of Hawaii. Training began in the jungle highlands near Hilo. Tachovsky used Walling's methods as a base: silent movement, long-range marksmanship, and map work, then layered on brutal close-quarters skills, hand-to-hand combat, knife fighting, garrote techniques, and how to kill sentries without a sound. He adapted British commander tactics for Pacific jungle warfare. They learned to live off the land, hunting wild boar, catching fish, and identifying edible plants, survival skills essential for long operations without resupply. They trained with piano wire garrotes, learned to coat wire with glue and crushed glass to make it deadlier. One Marine, nicknamed Wild Bill Emmer, became infamous for slipping into kill zones and rescuing wounded men armed only with a garrote and absolute silence. Equipment was a constant problem. The Corps issued them obsolete World War I Springfield rifles, thin rations, and no proper camouflage. The 40 Thieves improvised. They raided Army depots at night, stole newer weapons, canned food and whiskey, even liberated an Army captain's Jeep and repainted it marine green. Their thefts became legendary. Other units started calling them the 40 Thieves, not as an insult, but with grudging respect. Officers largely looked the other way because Tachovsky was building something unprecedented, a unit that could hunt Japanese soldiers on their own turf. By May 1944, the 40 Thieves were ready. Saipan loomed. 15 square miles of volcanic rock and jungle defended by 30,000 Japanese, the first invasion of Japanese home territory. High Command expected casualty rates up to 70% in the first week. Tachovsky's men would go in early, days before the main landings. Their orders were straightforward: scout defenses, map positions, kill officers and radio operators, and survive long enough to guide the main assault through what promised to be the bloodiest invasion of the Pacific War. At 0530 on June 15, 1944, Corporal Bill Campbell crouched in a Higgins boat 300 yards off Saipan's western shore. He was 21 and one of the 40 Thieves, watching battleship's 16-inch guns, destroyer batteries, and rocket rails turn the shoreline into smoke and fire. The noise was overwhelming, but the Japanese were waiting. The 2nd and 4th Marine Divisions hit the beaches around 8:40 with some 8,000 Marines in the first waves. Japanese mortars, machine guns, and artillery zeroed in on killing men in the surf and drowning wounded in shallow water. The 40 Thieves landed in the 4th wave. Their assignment differed from the beach-bound infantry. While line companies fought to secure the shore, Tachovsky's platoon pushed inland, hunting command posts, artillery positions, and supply dumps, targets regular units wouldn't reach for days. By noon, they were half a mile inland in dense sugarcane, where visibility sank to 10 feet. Perfect ambush country. Japanese defenders crouched in caves, bunkers, and spider holes patched with vegetation. The first silent kill came at 1300. 2 thieves on a trail spotted a lone Japanese radio operator setting up antenna wire. They closed from behind with piano wire garrotes. He died without a sound. They recovered his maps and radio codes and hid the body in the cane.
2 hours later, another team eliminated a 3-man observation post with knives. Japanese officers never knew their forward observers had vanished. Artillery fire lost coordination as observers went down unseen. Marines pushed through gaps in the defensive fires. This was precisely what Tachovsky had trained them to do: kill quietly, operate alone, and make battlefield decisions without waiting for orders.
The 40 thieves slipped through territory still controlled by the Japanese like ghosts. While conventional infantry fought set-piece battles, these men hunted. On June 16, Tachovsky led a patrol up Mount Tapachau, Mount Tipopale, a volcanic peak in central Saipan believed to host Japanese spotters directing artillery against Marine lines. He needed to locate and eliminate them. His team hacked upward through a suffocating jungle using machetes, reaching the base at 0900. There they found a narrow trail bending up the slope, fresh boot prints and bicycle tracks imprinted in the mud. The Japanese were moving troops and supplies by bike. Tachovsky quickly positioned his best shooters overlooking the trail. 5 snipers with Springfield rifles fitted with unertl scopes. Their orders were simple: wait for targets and take them down silently. By midday, Japanese servicemen began coasting downhill on bicycles. Officers, couriers, supply runners, exposed and unaware. The snipers eliminated 14 of them over the afternoon, never firing more than a single round per enemy and never revealing where the shots came from. Predictably, the Japanese dispatched a 40-man patrol to flush out the shooters. Tachovsky withdrew before contact and disappeared into the jungle. The searchers found only empty hides and corpses along the trail. That night, orders arrived for a new mission. Division intelligence had spotted a major Japanese ammunition depot near Garapan, Saipan's capital. Command wanted the thieves to recon the site and report on its defenses, and destroy it if the opportunity arose. It was a suicide job. Garapan lay 2 miles behind enemy lines, with thousands of Japanese soldiers between Marine positions and the target. If they were compromised, no one could help them. Tachovsky selected 8 of his fiercest men, scheduled their departure for 0200 on June 17, and told them they would infiltrate Japanese lines in complete darkness, locate the depot, and return before dawn. He chose not to mention the intelligence report he had read earlier, stating Japanese forces had been ordered to take no prisoners, that wounded Marines were being used as bait to lure rescue attempts, and that commanders were preparing for a final massed Banzai assault. The thieves were stepping into hell, and none would be the same afterward. They departed at 0200 with no moonlight to guide them, slipping westward through sugarcane toward Garapan. Every 50 yards they halted to listen. The island never slept. Japanese patrols prowled constantly. Distant artillery rumbled from no man's land. By 3:30 a.m., they had advanced a mile and crossed 2 enemy patrol routes undetected. Sergeant Bill Knuppel navigated by instinct, halting whenever he sensed danger ahead. The others trailed behind in single file, 10 feet apart, silent except for hand signals. At 4:15 a.m., they reached the outskirts of Garapan, a landscape pulverized by naval bombardment. Rubble replaced buildings, craters replaced streets, yet the defenders still operated a functioning base in the ruins. They observed soldiers moving through the debris, trucks rumbling along shattered roads, and intact communication lines. The ammunition depot stood at the city's north end. 3 concrete bunkers wrapped in barbed wire with guards at every entrance. Tachovsky counted 16 men visible, likely more inside. Their mission was reconnaissance only, report back without engaging. But he spotted a weakness: narrow ventilation shafts in the bunker walls, big enough for satchel charges. If they could plant explosives quietly, they could destroy the entire depot, depriving Japanese artillery of ammunition for days. He made the call. 2 men, Corporal Roscoe Mullins and Private Otto Habel, both familiar with demolitions, crawled toward the bunker while the others provided overwatch. They reached the shaft by 04:30 a.m., edging forward on their stomachs over the last 100 yards. Guards patrolled only 30 feet away. Mullins waited for the nearest guard to turn, then carefully lifted the satchel charge and wedged it into the opening, setting the timer for 15 minutes. They were only 10 yards from safety when a guard spotted them. He shouted and raised his rifle. Mullins shot first. The guard dropped, but the alarm was already spreading. Whistles screamed across the site, and soldiers poured from shattered buildings. From 200 yards back, the thieves opened fire to cover Mullins and Habel's retreat. The charge detonated at 04:57 a.m., 3 minutes early, blowing the bunker apart. Secondary blasts cascaded as artillery shells, mortar rounds, and rifle ammunition cooked off in the flames. A chain reaction roared for 5 minutes, lighting the sky orange and reducing structures to fragments raining across Garapan. Using the chaos, Tachovsky's men sprinted east into the cane fields. By 0600 a.m., every one of them had slipped safely back into Marine lines. They had just eliminated the largest ammunition stockpile in northern Saipan. Division intelligence estimated the explosion destroyed roughly 30% of Japan's artillery supply on the island. Enemy fire slackened drastically over the next 48 hours. Marine losses dropped. The advance surged. But the price would be paid. Japanese units realized Marine scouts were operating deep behind their lines and began hunting them aggressively. More patrols, hidden ambushes, and wounded Marines used as bait. Capture meant execution. The character of the battle changed overnight. On June 19, a 4-man thief patrol scouting trails near Mount Tapachau walked straight into a trap. Japanese soldiers had hidden in trees and underground positions, waiting until the patrol was fully surrounded before opening fire. The patrol leader died instantly. The remaining 3 were hit, but managed to break through and limp back to Marine lines with terrible news. Japanese troops had placed 2 wounded Marines as bait, leaving them crying for help in an open clearing. When the thieves came to rescue them, the ambush sprung. Both wounded Marines were killed in the crossfire. That night, the 40 thieves gathered privately for a grim, unofficial meeting.
They met without officers, just enlisted men, and voted unanimously. No thief would be taken alive. If a man was wounded and could not escape, his comrades would give him a quick death rather than leave him to be captured and tortured. The war on Saipan had become intensely personal. By June 23, the 40 thieves had been in unbroken combat for 8 days straight. There was no rest and no relief from the front. They worked 12-hour shifts. Half the platoon scouted by day, while the other half infiltrated enemy positions at night. Sleep came in 2-hour pockets. Food was whatever could be stolen or scavenged. Casualties mounted. The platoon that had started with 40 men was already diminished. By June 23, 32 remained combat effective. 3 were dead, and 5 gravely wounded and evacuated. The arithmetic was cruel. At that rate, the unit would be gone by July 1. Still, they kept hunting. On June 24, a 4-man team scouting the Kagman Peninsula discovered a battalion command post concealed inside a cave system, 20 officers, radio equipment, and maps that detailed defensive positions across northern Saipan. The team could not assault the site directly. There were too many guards. Instead, they marked the location and called in naval gunfire. At 1600 hours, 14-inch shells slammed into the cave, and the battalion's command structure vanished in a single devastating strike. Enemy coordination collapsed, and Marines advanced 300 yards that afternoon with little resistance. The next day would bring the platoon's worst loss. Corporal Martin Dyer led a 5-man patrol into thick jungle near Mount Tapachau to find reported artillery positions. They located 4 Type 92 guns hidden in a narrow ravine and camouflaged so well aerial reconnaissance had missed them. After 30 minutes of observation, counting crews and noting ammo stores, they began to withdraw. 200 yards from the guns, Japanese infantry appeared from 3 directions and the ambush was complete. Machine guns opened from elevated perches while rifles swept at ground level. The patrol was trapped in a kill zone with no cover. Dyer ordered his men to break and run for friendly lines, while he stayed behind with a Browning automatic rifle, laying down covering fire. 3 members of the patrol escaped. Dyer and 1 other Marine did not. The companion left with Dyer was later found dead from multiple gunshot wounds. Dyer's own body was never recovered. The survivors reported he had killed at least 7 Japanese before being overrun. He was awarded the Navy Cross posthumously for sacrificing himself to save his patrol. Dyer's death hit the thieves hard. He had been a popular leader who never asked anyone to do something he wouldn't do himself. His loss was a stark reminder that skill and training could only delay the inevitable on Saipan. Then, on June 26th, intelligence arrived that altered the entire tactical picture. Japanese commanders were preparing a massive Banzai charge, perhaps as many as 3,000 men thrown at Marine positions in a suicidal assault. Command ordered Tachovsky's platoon to infiltrate enemy assembly areas, find officers, and eliminate as many leaders as possible before the attack. Tachovsky received the orders late that night. The expected assault could come within 48 hours. He had 1 night to disrupt the enemy's preparations. He was to take 20 men deep behind enemy lines, locate command posts, and kill officers to sow chaos prior to the Banzai. It was the most dangerous mission they had been given. Japanese troops were consolidating for a major offensive. Thousands of soldiers were moving into attack positions, and perimeter security was tight. The area would be saturated with enemy forces, and extraction would be nearly impossible if the operation went bad. Tachovsky briefed his men at 2300 hours, laid out the grim odds and the likelihood of heavy casualties, and asked for volunteers. Every single one of the 20 selected stepped forward, not from bravado, but because they all understood what failure would mean. The Banzai, if left unchecked, would smash Marine lines with overwhelming force. They chose to strike first.
Thousands of Marines would die if the Japanese assault plans were not disrupted. The 40 thieves would go out first, hunt down enemy officers in the dark, and most likely, not all of them would return. The 20 men slipped out at midnight on June 27 under a moonless, clouded sky, ideal for infiltration. They divided into 5 4-man teams, each responsible for its own zone, and each knowing there would be no rescue if they were discovered. Tachovsky led the center element, pushing westward through enemy lines toward known command post locations. By 0200, they were a full mile deep into hostile territory. They found Japanese troops everywhere, soldiers asleep in foxholes, sentries on watch, men hauling supplies. Thousands were gathering for the upcoming Banzai assault. The first officer died at 0230, a Japanese captain studying maps inside a captured U.S. tent, his lantern casting a faint glow. Tachovsky's men crept within 50 yards, and one suppressed Springfield shot put him face down on his papers. None of the nearby guards heard a thing. Over the next 3 hours, the 5 teams quietly eliminated 17 more officers, majors, captains, lieutenants, key leaders in the impending charge. Every kill was silent, every team extracted without being detected. By 0330, all 20 thieves were safely back inside Marine lines, not 1 man lost. The Banzai assault struck on July 7th, just before dawn. 3,000 Japanese warriors screaming with fixed bayonets, hitting the American front along a 2-mile stretch. The fighting was savage and up close. Rifles, pistols, knives, entrenching tools, anything lethal. But the assault lacked direction. Many officers who should have organized the attack were already dead. Units charged blindly without coordination or support. Communications failed completely. What was meant to be an orchestrated breakthrough crumbled into chaos. Marine defenses held firm, artillery and machine guns cut down wave after wave. By 800, the attack had collapsed. Some 2,500 Japanese soldiers lay dead, and the Marine line still stood. With the failure of the Banzai assault, the Battle of Saipan was effectively decided. Enemy forces fractured and retreated into caves for desperate last stands. The 40 thieves had done exactly what they were created to do and made a critical difference. After 21 days of non-stop combat, the platoon finished the campaign with only 27 men still standing. 13 were casualties, 4 killed, and 9 wounded. The survivors returned to Hawaii that August. The platoon was officially dissolved in October, its members reassigned to regular infantry. The Marine Corps judged such specialized scout sniper units too costly in manpower, but their impact endured. Frank Tachovsky received the Silver Star, and his methods influenced Marine reconnaissance for the remainder of the war. The idea of small, highly skilled teams operating independently behind enemy lines became a core Marine principle. What William Whaling pioneered on Guadalcanal, the 40 Thieves perfected on Saipan. Modern Marine scout sniper traditions trace directly to these men. Whaling's fieldcraft and stalking techniques, Tachovsky's fierce selection standards, their silent killing and autonomous decision-making. Every Marine sniper trained since 1942 has inherited lessons written in the jungles and cane fields of the Pacific. The Scout Sniper MOS was officially retired in December 2023 after 81 years. Yet the legacy continues in reconnaissance units, doctrine, and stories passed from Marine to Marine. Proof that sometimes the most dangerous warriors are the ones unseen. These men deserve to be remembered: Wild Bill Whaling, Frank Tachovsky, Martin Dyer, and every one of the 40 Thieves, because their courage and innovation saved lives and shaped the future of the Corps.